Hello and welcome to Postgres FM. I'm Michael from PG Mustard. I'm back after a couple of weeks off. Thank you so much for holding the fort, Nikolai. This is Nikolai from Postgres AI, my usual co-host. How are you, Nikolai? How are you doing?
Much better than last 2 weeks. Thank you for returning. I was thinking maybe that's it, right? So maybe you decided to stop this after 1 year of doing it.
Unlike Americans, us Europeans do take holidays, and 2 weeks off, and must be almost all of your annual leave, I guess, over there. But we like our summer holidays here.
I don't know what you're talking about. I have 3 spots in my calendar today. I've noticed, so people still can schedule talks, even if it's holiday. Today is July 4th, but I still have some work to do probably. So this is episode number 53. Today is July 4th, and our first episode was published last year, July 5. So tomorrow, we can publish it tomorrow maybe, if you do work faster, right? What do you think about online format? I received interesting opinions that probably we should do online more often.
You mean live, right? So, there's positives and negatives, right? Like last time you did it live, but I think the first 14 minutes was silent. So that was suboptimal. And that's the kind of thing, we have so many internet issues with Californian internet that I'm a little bit nervous of doing episodes live for that reason. But yeah, I can see the appeal. Obviously, you can't publish a podcast live as well. So there's the feed would always be a later thing. So I've always seen this as a podcast first, and then we share the video. Why not? There's no harm in doing that. But yeah, I'm open to it. It's just I like a relaxed life and the idea of having a couple of days to fit in the editing before everything being published. I think I'd feel if we published it live, I'd feel like I was against the clock a little bit to edit and publish in time. But I don't know. I'm open to it.
Yeah, people like the ability to say to me, to keep saying to me during 15 minutes that I forgot to unmute myself.
Yeah,
it was entertaining, I guess. But it's good that YouTube allows you to trim this. I also noticed a couple of guys, sorry folks, decided that something is on YouTube, and one guy wrote, "I see if there is no sound, I edit it to watch list, and I will return tomorrow to check if there is sound." And the problem was, like in the first line, I said apologies. Sound starts at like minute 14, but it's okay. It was funny. It's good. YouTube allows you to trim like to remove these parts, but in this case, it allowed me only next day. I was waiting. So yeah, okay. So without you, it's much less efficient, as you say, right?
Well, yeah. So this is our 1 year anniversary, and we decided we're going to do a mailbag episode. We've got a lot of requests and suggestions and things from people over the year, probably more than either of us were expecting. So thank you, everybody. But it does mean we have struggled to keep up with the suggestions. And we've got a few that probably aren't full episodes, or that we can give a little kind of quick couple of opinions, or a little bit of maybe even it's just a quick answer to. So I think the idea was for us to go through some of those this week. So it's going to be a bit of a mixed bag. Hopefully a few of you that have asked those questions will get something out of it, and we can probably follow up with a few of them in more detail at some point.
Right. It's like a photo dump in Instagram. You can swipe a little bit to speeding up. By the way, the reader side, the software we are using, just told me that subscription has expired, meaning that exactly 1 year ago you subscribed, right? Congratulations. Wow. But you need to pay again. Okay. Right. Okay, let's start.
Wonderful. So the first question I had in the list was, what is the effect of wow log hints equals on after bulk deletes? Why does the next select one slow and generate tons of wool? So this one came in via Twitter.
Yeah, that's strange. I saw this question, and it's strange that while log hints leads to. I don't think there is connection here. Maybe I'm wrong, but while log hints are needed to propagate hint bits to wall and to replicas. So the primary one of like the key purposes of it is if failovers, for example, Patroni supports it. If failover happens and there is some deviation. Old primary can be slightly in future compared to new primary. And in this case, regular approach, we need to rebuild it. But if hint bits are wall logged, Patroni can apply PG rewind, or we can apply PG rewind and make standby out of former primary much faster. But speaking of bulk deletes, I think the problem is not in while log hints. Maybe I'm wrong again, but I think the problem itself is in bulk deletes themselves. Like if you delete a lot of tuples and then read from the same pages some live tuples, or revisit, like if indexes don't have version information, so index scan checking heap records in heap and table might find that these records already dead, just deleted recently. And there is also a mechanism like in place vacuum. When you select something, Postgres might decide to vacuum right now a little bit in this page. And when vacuum happens, it leads to additional wall writes, of course. So I think the problem is, maybe I'm wrong. While log hint, if it's off, then on replicas we might see selects leading to writes because we don't have hint bits. There's an old article in Okimeter blog, we can attach it. If you don't have all log hints, then on replicas you just select something and Postgres decides to update hint bits, and this causes some writes on replicas, but this is different. So I think the author of this question deals with bulk deletes, and the problem is bulk deletes and lack of control of auto vacuum behavior. So what we need like to split deletes in batches. We need to control it. We need to make sure that dead tuples are cleaned up more aggressively, more actively by auto vacuum workers, or manually we can vacuum ourselves, right? So this is what I think
makes
in
sense.
this case, but maybe I'm wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll respond to the person on Twitter, so hopefully they can let us know more detail if they've got it. For anybody else wondering, this is off by default, so not something you need to worry about unless you've turned it on. Cool. Well,
yeah. If I'm wrong, it would be great to have some reproduction and explore it, and it would be interesting to explore like with additional tooling.
Could it be that the select is setting hint bits and therefore causing a load of full page writes, whereas it wouldn't have done if you're just doing a select afterwards? You wouldn't have caused any wow without this setting on. So you're causing a bunch of full page writes that you wouldn't have done in the previous setup.
Maybe actually, yeah, interesting. Well, yeah, it's interesting. We can explore this with page inspect, for example, right?
Oh, I think I might have lost you. Talking of bad internet connections.
Yes. So I proposed. I think we can explore this using page inspect extension. We can delete, inspect the pages before our select and after our select, and hint bits will be visible there. So page inspect could help to understand the behavior, cool. and yeah.
Great suggestion. Should we move on?
Yeah, let's do it. It should be better now. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I don't know.
Do you want to pick one, or should I go on to the next one that I've got here?
Yeah, go with a bunch of questions, and then I will pick.
Right. So, how to get started reading Postgres source code? Maybe PostgreSQL style C reference guide to consult with for non-C programmers. So yeah, any advice for people first getting started, or I saw on the wiki, on the Postgres wiki, that there's a really good, slightly oddly titled page called "So You Want to Be a Developer," which I actually thought was really good advice in general from everything I've seen. So I'll link that up in the show notes. But how about from your perspective, having actually done it?
Well, I think reading source code is not a major issue, a major challenge if you want to be a developer. The major challenge is different. It's like dealing with discussions with other people and convince them that your vision is better.
Yeah.
So defending your thoughts, opinions. But reading source code requires like in the beginning it doesn't require C coding experience. It requires just understanding English. Because there are good comments and there are good README files. It's enough to understand what's happening. Like code is covered with good comments, definitely. And I think this is the main thing. Like I usually, usually you just read it, and maybe some challenges to find how to find proper places in source code, because it's huge. You need to find proper places. And I usually use just git grep. Sometimes I use GitLab or GitHub search, but it's not super convenient. Also, there is SourceGraph or something which helps you to navigate. You have a function, you can quickly see. I have a browser extension for that. I can quickly jump to definition of functions to see all calls. So it's basic tooling for navigation in code, regardless of language. It helps as well to navigate a little bit. But I also think there is opportunity here, and actually some small secret to be revealed. There is opportunity to have a good tool to talk to source code, right? To like explain me, I mean ChatGPT, right, or something, some LLM or something. Just explain me how this is working, and based on comments, and not only comments on code itself. This tool can explain you, mention particular files and even line numbers, depending on version, of course. Also, a very good thing is to read 2 books, internals books. One from Suzuki, one from Igor Rogov, and particularly Igor Rogov's book about Postgres internals. It has links to source code, like this. Check this file. We describe something here in terms of how Postgres works, and you can find it in this file. It has on side these links. It's very convenient. Also, like you are interested in something and you read the book which with detailed explanation and backlinks to source code itself. This is my overview of the problem.
Nice. I agree with you, by the way, and I've found GitHub Search to be surprisingly good. For reading for getting to places where the comments are good.
A year or 2 ago. Mm-hmm.
Nice. Next one. So this is quite a long one, but it's basically about isolation levels. So let me just see if I can summarize. Have we seen, in fact, let's go through it all. Their uses in different scenarios, battle-tested strategies and insights, performance trade-offs, edge cases to consider at scale with replication, sharding, etc. There was some interesting Jepsen analysis that they've linked to, and has this type of behavior or another one similar to this affected you or your clients in any significant way?
Well, I'm very OLTP guy with very focus on mobile and web apps, and we usually used to work at default level repeatable, not repeatable, read committed, right? In which you might see inconsistency, for example, in single transaction. Oh, by the way, we also usually tend to have small transactions. Sometimes single statement transactions, right? And actually, being like DBA, I hate when people use explicit begin commit block for a single statement. It doesn't make sense. It increases round-trip time and affects performance. Not sometimes not significantly, but sometimes a lot. So so first of all, isolation levels matter a lot when you have multiple statements in single transaction, and there you can have anomalies. But it's interesting, like, to understand, like, usually we have asynchronous replicas, usually, and we have this problem when reads are not yet propagated, but if someone, for example, added a comment, refreshes page, and we go to replica in second request and don't see comment which was just added by this user. So we implement something like stick to primary and so on. And similar effect can be seen with just single node, primary node, because if you have different transaction, inside transaction you read something, then you read something else because you read old committed transaction. So these anomalies, and or deleted something. Some concurrent session deleted something, and in your transaction you just read something, you read it again and you don't see it, right? And this is okay. I mean, we got used to it. We just keep it in mind, and when we design our transactions consisting of multiple statements, we just understand that this might happen. If you remember about this, of course, right?
So I was going to ask you actually, what proportion of your clients, your customers, sorry, that's a confusing word here, even change the default here? I haven't seen many, or I haven't heard of many.
Well, first of all, we all change when we use pgdump. Especially, for example, pgdump is working in repeatable read because we need snapshot. We want we want tables to be in consistent position. We want to deal with single snapshot. We don't want like reading different table, breaking foreign key, for example. And if pgdump, we run pgdump in multiple sessions, -j or number of jobs is 4, for example, to move faster, right? In this case, we have snapshot, which they are synchronized. All workers of pgdump will work with single snapshot. We can do it in our application. It's not difficult actually to specify snapshot in repeatable read transaction. So repeatable read transaction is needed, right? It's good. And we all implicitly use it when we run pgdump. But as for explicit use, I saw only two big use cases. One use case when people understand very well what they do, and they move very carefully to higher level, understanding that when you move to repeatable read and especially to serializable, you are going to start getting some deadlocks occasionally and some slowness. But a second case is more interesting and probably happens more often. Some new developers which don't understand yet the problems of moving to upper level. I mean, sometimes we need it. For example, pgdump is one of the cases, or some billing system. Probably sometimes we do need a higher level to avoid these anomalies. But another approach is like people just decide, oh, we want to be in very consistent state. Let's start with serializable level right away. I saw it not once. And in this case, then the second thing they do is start complaining about Postgres performance.
Yes,
even with few users. Right? Yes, yeah. Even with few users. Of course, if like for mobile and web apps, the lowest in Postgres, the lowest level read committed should be default. But with understanding all issues with it.
This is the big thing I've seen. I think when people first learn about transactions, it leads them to assume at least a repeatable read behavior. So I think it does catch developers out in when people are first learning it, which is understandable. And there's a good blog post by a former colleague of mine actually on this that I'll link up, Lawrence Jones, who I know from Go Cardless. So he writes about that in detail, and I think it's a good one to share with juniors on your team if they're learning about this.
Right. So it's my comparison to replicas, synchronous and asynchronous, or semi-synchronous. It's different, but in terms of anomalies, it's quite similar. I mean, users have anomalies, and with asynchronous replicas, they also have anomalies, and we need to deal with it. But why? Like, if you think performance doesn't matter, let's make like we have 5 replicas. Let's make all of them synchronous, right? And no anomalies anymore. They all have data, the same data. And let's go to serializable. Synchronous replicas, serializable, the best.
Yeah. Oh, and in multi-regions around the world as well, right? Yeah.
Of course, with big latencies, with big network complexity.
What could possibly go wrong? Yeah.
Right. And serializable.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Awesome. Right. Let's move on. So, somebody's asked.
By the way, this is probably one of the topics we probably should dive deeper and explain many cases. And I'm refreshing my memory from time to time. I'm sitting in read committed most of my life, so sometimes I go there and find new things to me. So I would like to explore this and discuss maybe deeper.
Nice. Wonderful. Data encryption in Postgres. That's all we got on this one.
Data encryption can be different, like at rest and in transit, right? Two big areas. And I think...
Go on.
I think, I'm again, security is what we need to deal with, but I'm not a big fan of exploring all. Usually I prefer to just to check what's the best approach and so on. And encryption, of course, is a good thing, but compression is also a good thing, right? And sometimes they go together, but not always. And encryption it should be enabled. Like even if you, for example, especially if you work in cloud, but it should be enabled at protocol level. TLS.
Yeah, so okay, I see where you're coming from now. I assume they were actually talking about the time I see this come up most in Postgres is because we don't have the whole, encryption at rest at the database level. So
and compression also.
Yeah, so there's the common argument is that you can encrypt the disks
using which key, provided by you or by cloud itself. If provided by cloud, then how good is it?
Well, I also heard. Well, I tend to trust cloud, at least the major cloud providers, more than I trust myself. But you may not.
No.
The other thing that somebody brought up to me recently that makes a lot of sense is that also you've got to worry about your backups. So if you've just encrypted at the disk level and you've got a Postgres backup, and you're storing that somewhere, that can be restored and it's not encrypted. So there are other things to consider. And usually, there are a couple of
usually people store backups in object storage, which makes total sense because of its durability in terms of not accessibility, like high availability. Maybe high availability of S3, for example, is less than of compared to EBS volumes in AWS. But durability in terms of data loss, it's insane, and the data won't be lost. But they also usually they are not surrounded by some network solutions. So I mean, these buckets are available from anywhere, from any place, and you just need proper keys, and you can access them from different regions, from different customer accounts, and so on. It's interesting, but of course they usually provide a lot of things for encryption, and sometimes it's challenging to use your own keys. For example, it might break some processes, if you want to repeatable retries for chunk upload in some clouds. If you use their keys, it's fine, but if you use customer managed keys, it might not work, and you need to retry whole file, which might be 1 gigabyte. In Postgres, everything is stored, all data and indexes are split to 1 gigabyte files, but if you compress it, it will be probably 300-400 megabytes, depending on data and so on. In this case, it means that if you want to use your own keys, probably you need to perform retries of whole file, and it's not super efficient. So there are many challenges there, and also if you encrypt and then you want also to we need, this is security topic, so it's very big, and for example, one of the problems, it's not like encryption can work in both ways, and sometimes encryption is used against the data owner. Like ransomware, which encrypts all your data, and then they say they will give you a key only if you pay. So how to protect against that? And sometimes people see bigger danger in this area, like how to avoid encryption. I mean, not to avoid, but you probably need to store backups in 2 clouds, for example. Because one cloud can be stolen, your account is stolen, everything, like you lost access. And losing data is probably... So 2 big risks. Losing data is different risk. Of course, one risk is leaking data, very big risk, but also losing data is different risk. And encryption can be used against you in the second case. So, yeah.
Is it worth mentioning a couple of third-party tools?
Yeah, well,
not tools necessarily, but I think both Cybertech and EDB have non-core solutions here for that. If you seen
encrypt what?
Like transparent data encryption from Cybertech.
Oh, it's different. It's at upper level. It's not encrypting disk. It's encrypting data inside Postgres, and you might
which then results in even your backups having being encrypted, right?
To me, as a Postgres user, I think it's a very good feature we should all have. But I remember some discussions about it and some dead end in development. I mean, somehow it's not in core, it cannot be brought to core yet, and so on. I don't remember details, unfortunately. But in my opinion, it should be in Postgres as a feature. It would be great.
Yeah, I'll link to the ones that I'm aware of in the show notes, just in case anybody does want or need this and wasn't aware of those. I think we've probably got time for one more. Okay. I'm scared that the one I'm going to pick is a bit big, but do you have any on the list that you wanted to make sure we talked about?
No, but I can choose a couple. Let's for example, top mistakes related to performance. No, it's not suggestions. It was from me. Well, migration from other databases like Oracle to Postgres, also on non-relational ones like Couchbase, Cassandra to Postgres. It would be it's a big topic, but fortunately in this case, I'm not a big expert in migration. The main migration I did was from MySQL to Postgres many years ago in my project. But my colleagues did a lot of work migrating from Oracle and so on, and I understand the process. Of course, it depends usually on how much code you have on database side, because
by that you mean like procedures and functions.
Right. Migrating schema is quite easy, but if you have a lot of PL/SQL or TSQL code, you need to rewrite it, and this probably will take a lot of time. And second biggest challenge, converting schema is also a challenge, but it's solvable. There are automation tools. You will deal with some issues which probably is easy to fix. The key is to test a lot, as usual. Experiments, right? And second biggest challenge after code, this server code, is probably if you want near zero downtime migration. In this case, migration is used in proper meaning, I think, not in weird meaning when we change schema. Well, we also change schema, but we change engine for schema, right? But in this case, you need some replication solution, logical replication solution,
like change data capture type thing.
Yeah,
I actually, this is something I have got a little bit of at least second-hand experience of. With I ended up there's a cross company working group in France that are doing a lot of migrations from Oracle, from SQL Server, from Sybase. It's become really popular, Postgres, in France amongst huge organizations.
And they wrote government organizations as well.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of large organizations, including government agencies. And they collaborated on a guide, but it was all in French. And I spent a while with one of them, so I ended up translating a few of the chapters into English. So a few of them are thanks to me, a few of them are thanks to other people. So I'll link that up as well, because there's basically a tried and tested formula for doing these. A lot of consultancies make a lot of their money helping people do these, so you can get help from others. But yeah, it's not a small project, because a lot of these databases do encourage using stored procedures and functions. So like a lot, yeah, if you have a lot of those, don't expect it to be a small project.
What about NoSQL database systems to Postgres?
I haven't seen much of it, to be honest, but hopefully we will in the coming years.
I saw cases, but I don't remember any big questions about it. Just do it, that's it.
I guess it's quite simple, right? I guess by its definition, it doesn't have much schema.
If it's MongoDB, there is a new project called FerretDB, which like speaks Mongo. But yeah, this is one of the way, just to use some extension or some project on top of Postgres, which will help. But if it's Cassandra or Couchbase, I don't know. You can use JSON as usual, right? Yeah, there will be difficulties, definitely. There will be difficulties.
Yeah, well, if anybody does have experience of that, let us know. But I imagine those are much simpler projects overall.
If complex queries to JSON documents in some NoSQL JSON-like storage, it can be easy to convert them as is, but you probably will have not good performance and also consistency. Why do you migrate with Postgres? You won't probably benefit from its strong sides and strong relational data model, ACID, and so on. Probably you should move some of parts of your data to relational model, not just
maybe
JSON.
Even normalize it. Yeah.
Yes, and in this case, it's kind of like building something from scratch, almost.
Okay, good point. Actually, performance is a big part of some of these migrations. So once you've done the schema, once you've done the code, sometimes they get stuck, and you see it come up on the mailing list quite a lot. People saying, this used to be 1 second in Oracle, and now it's 20 seconds in Postgres. What can I do about it? You only get the squeaky wheels. You only hear about the ones that are slower, of course, because they're the ones holding the project up. But it's quite common to have, if you've got thousands of different queries going through your system, a few of them are probably going to be slower in Postgres than Oracle without some tuning. So it's quite common for that to be a big part.
fully fair, SQL Server and Oracle optimization code is much more complex, sophisticated, bigger than Postgres. But on the other side, Oracle has hints and tendency to use them quite a lot, manual control on of plans. But also like SQL Server, if you compare performance with Postgres, sometimes I saw some works, SQL Server is winning quite obviously quite often. But it does mean that in Postgres we cannot make things work well, and it's improving also, right? So I don't know. Like I understand that it's not that simple. That like it's easy to improve. Well, code base is huge. Some methods for query optimization used in commercial big database systems are very interesting, and many of them Postgres doesn't have yet. So
it's a good point, actually. Like index, sometimes it doesn't have them like natively, like an index skip scan, for example, but by rewriting
loose index scan, you need to master it yourself manually, and other systems have it. We've got transaction control in stored procedures, not functions. In Postgres only in version 12 or when? A few years ago only.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, those guys have it for many years. So, like, I mean, we should not be like we are the best. We are the best in many areas, but not in all, right? I mean, Postgres. And understanding pros and cons is important, not to be like all good. No, sometimes it's not that good, and improvements are needed, and so on. Workarounds are needed, like loose index scan.
Yeah, all I meant is it can be a big part of those migrations, and they can get stuck at that point, right?
And what I can say, like Postgres has so many things. Usually we have like, okay, maybe not in a way you got used to, but in different way we can achieve very good performance, definitely. And you can put very mission critical systems with under big TPS, a lot of data, a lot of TPS, and so on and so on. So it's possible to build big, reliable system using Postgres.
Nice. And I think this is another one of those ones where we could do a whole
yeah, migration is a huge topic. Again, I'm not an expert, but I can explore and say things definitely. Well, maybe some small last thing and that's it? Or what do you think?
Sounds good. Yeah, go on then. One more.
Okay, latest failover best practices.
Oh, you picked a nice small one then.
Failover
Use
best practices.
Patroni and then...
Failover is when things go wrong, right? What do you do when failover happens? Answer is if well prepared, you shouldn't do anything, and this is the key, right? I remember times when no good failover systems existed, and also there was consensus that in Postgres, in my opinion, it should be in Postgres, inside Postgres, but so far it doesn't seem to be happening at all. But we have Patroni and others. A recommendation is to use Patroni or other system which follows consensus, well-developed consensus algorithms, right? Like Raft. But if you use Rep Manager, Rep MGR, I have bad news for you. Split brain is very often in large systems, or in cases when you have many clusters. It's very likely. So migrate from it. This is the key. And just use Patroni, for example, or I don't know, like Patroni is obvious winner right now.
Are there any particularly good guides or books on it that you recommend?
Well, just documentation, but well, there are some tricks there, but it's worth a separate episode probably. But one of the things, for example, you should understand if you use, we mentioned asynchronous replicas. If you have asynchronous replica during failover, you might have data loss. And Patroni defines by default, if I remember correctly, it's 10 megabytes, MB. 10 MB of data might be lost in case of failover. So this should be understood. Or you need to start using quorum commit and so commit goes to at least to 2 nodes, and Patroni will choose the best one, and probably you won't lose any data during failover. Yeah, actually, I suspect maybe the author of this question meant something different, not failover, but switchover.
Or maybe high availability. Like maybe I think it might be the same one as the one above, which is also a huge topic about high availability.
Yeah, because there are also best practices how to perform switchover and to avoid long downtime and not to lose data. It's not rocket science, but there are some tricks there. Let's promise to explore these both areas in the future. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Good.
Well, thanks everybody for these questions and suggestions. Thank you, Nikolai.
Thank you for being back and continuing this, because I was in fear you want to stop it.
You're okay. Crazy. I said I'll be back. I'm back.
Okay. And by the way, don't watch all those draft recordings in this Riverside. Just delete them. They are all bad. Yeah.
That's so funny. All right, take care.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Michael. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.